We are live. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. This week we are going to do a rapid reaction to round 4. Not a very successful round for us. One win last night helped us avoid a reverse sweep. We went 1-2 on our best bets and we lost the mixed matchup. That brings us, after 1 month of footy, to 5-5 on best bets, 2-2 on mixed matchups. So certainly we can't sit here and pretend that's good. Every single loss does hurt. And we've basically treaded water so far. If you look at our profit, we're pretty much dead even. We're up a few measly dollars. But if you played multis as well, you would be down. So, of course, we never promise that we can win every single week. But the truth of the matter is, even though we definitely have the belief that we can do well in the long term, you're just not going to win 6 out of every 10. So at least that's real world punting for you guys. We hope that people are only backing the tips they agree on. It's certainly disappointing after 4 rounds to say we've gone no better than someone flipping coins. But on a positive note, even though this has been a disappointing run so far, there'd be plenty of people after 4 weeks of footy who wouldn't be in profit at all this season. So it has not been the easiest season for punters. So I think where we're at, we're still pretty confident because we still don't feel like we've really hit our stride yet. And we don't feel like we've nailed a lot of games yet. So I know that when we probably don't deserve a record better than 5-5, to be brutally honest. But I certainly know we can do better. Another thing that is encouraging, Matthias, as I throw to you, the Padonis who will join me, is we had 3 games of best bets, went 1-2, which isn't good. But is this a good sign that the other 5 games we gave out a lean and went 5 from 5 on those leans, of course?
Always the way, isn't it? Apologies to everyone who can hear my throat. It's a little bit sore. I was shouting a bit too much over the weekend, but that's all right. Onwards and upwards. And yes, it was disappointing, our first losing round of best bets. I know that we had a losing week last week if you include the mixed matchup, but this one we went 1-2 on our best bets. And yes, as you touched on, we had 5 of our other leans and they sort of all won there, but it wasn't to be. We didn't sort of find a strong enough edge to make that a play long term. But nonetheless, we roll into the recap.
It's certainly frustrating because it's never set in stone what our best bets are going to be. It's a bit of negotiation. It's how we feel. It's what the market's telling us. And then anytime you lean to a game, you don't play it, you feel like you're left something on the table. But I do at least hope that, followers might benefit from that. Maybe they don't bet against the game if we still lean one way, whatever it may be. It means we were right on at least a couple of games this round. And I don't necessarily even want to be totally right if we don't give out a play. So I was coming into today saying I wouldn't mind if either of these underdogs put up a bit of a fight. It's not what I expect, but I'd like to see it. And then it was far from the case. But we'll get into that. Look, to get better, we need to interpret what we've seen so far, including what we learned in round 4. And no market watch from Tristan. I think the bookies didn't do that well this weekend with all the big blowout scores and a lot of favourites getting home. In fact, I think every favourite won except for one of the favourites we were on, being the Broncos, who were only like a 2-point favourite. But we'll get to that. We'll get to all of those. But the round started pretty crazily with the Titans 8 beating the West Tigers 6, a game that didn't have a try for the first 79 minutes. Did you take anything out of this one, Padonis?
Yeah, it was one of those games where we sort of leaned the Tigers. We were close to taking them, but we just felt that the way that the Gold Coast lost that game last week against Canberra, that they'd be a little bit fired up and a little bit more in tune with that result. But it wasn't to be. The Tigers were in that for long periods. And as everyone sort of knows, that the try right at the death there when they had a set on the line and it hits the post, and then the Tigers, their 5'8", actually cleaned it up, and then he copped a big hit, lost the ball, and Brimson sort of scores. So sort of sums up where the Tigers are at the moment. And when you look at Madge in the box there after that try, I thought he was going to try to jump out, but it was it was definitely a tough one for all fans of the Tigers, even though they cover the 10.5 easily.
Yeah, they cannot take a trick. That is a cruel ending. Madden actually didn't have a bad game. And for a bomb to hit the post, it ends up in your hands and you spill it in the final minute. Interesting moment a few minutes earlier where the Tigers were up by 2, got a penalty, chose to take the 2 and extend the lead to 4. Now, you can argue that in a game with no tries, you do take the points because now you're further than 2 ahead. You know, teams can kick an improbable 2-point field goal, but obviously also you give away a penalty, it can tie it up. But then there's the other argument that the opposition is desperate when they're down, and extending your lead from 2 to 4 doesn't achieve a great deal. You know, it depends. Obviously, you're only going to lose on a converted try. But I thought it was the right decision to take the 2, provided that some time would run off the clock. But I made this point, I think we talked about, there's no rhyme or reason with the clock these days, and it does seem to favour the home team. Titans played the Eels in round 1. Mitchell Moses took the piss and took a penalty from in front, and they ran 2 minutes off the clock very late. This game, the Tigers went to take the 2. The clock instantly stopped. I reckon they burned about 20 seconds. So they'd like that time over again. You know, coming into this game, after watching it, 15, 20 minutes in, I said, this is hindsight, but geez, we should have been on unders because we had a Tigers team that was winless and we had a Titans team that had blown a 22-0 lead. So they were desperate. So both teams desperate. And pretty much that game, if you didn't watch it, lucky you. But if you didn't watch that game, it was pretty much just a carry on from the Tigers-Warriors second half in round 3, which also had no tries. So not much more we need to say about that game. Let's move to Friday, where another lean that we had was the Cronulla Sharks 18 beating the Knights 0. Your takeaways, Padonis?
So as you said, it was another lean we had to the Sharks, and had I known Ponga looked so poor and sort of disjointed, probably would have taken the Sharks because I sort of upgraded the Knights a little bit too much for his inclusion, where I think it's there was some rumours that came about over the weekend as well that he was sort of had a secret meeting with the Redcliffe Dolphins and Bennett, so maybe his head isn't all in this season. I'm not too sure. But had we known how that would sort of play out, we would have taken the Sharks. We just felt that their performance last week was a little bit sort of left them too popular in the market. But the other thing we said as well with the unders, and this was just a game where there was hardly any offense. Even though the Sharks looked brilliant on Thursday night against the Dragons in the wet, we sort of warned against. We see that performance again because the Knights are such a gritty team and they can defend well. So I thought the Knights were in that game for long periods. I think the Sharks just have a little bit too much class in some of the key areas there, and the Sharks, sort of ran away with that game late, scoring 2 tries in the final 12 minutes, and kept the Knights to 0 as well. And they had a few sets on the line there. And shout out to Aiden Tolman, scoring the first try of the match on his 300th game at something like 1,000 to 1 odds, but.
That's right. He was off the bench as well. That game was a little bit tighter than the final score suggests because it was only 8-0, and the Knights had attacking sets in the second half. They eventually got Dom Young sent to the bin, so that made it even tougher. And then I think there was a key moment where Rudolph had a one-on-one strip when the Knights were in attack. The Sharks scored the very next set, 14-0. Game over. I know the big headline out of this game is just criticizing Ponga because it felt like he barely did anything, but have said that this team has so limited in attacking options that a good defense can key in on somebody and always number up strong on the side that player drifts to. So, I don't know what he's expected to do half the time. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Kalen this season, as we kind of said even in the preseason preview, and I don't think it's fair to put all the blame on him. They're a limited attack, and this Sharks defense is pretty stout, and it was another impressive performance by Sharkies. An impressive performance again by the home team later Friday night, unfortunately for us, because our best bet of Rabbitohs plus 1.5 tries went down, with the Panthers 26 defeating the Rabbitohs 12. Do you feel we got this one wrong, Padonis? And if we did, where did we go wrong?
Yeah, ultimately I feel that we got it wrong, even though I will say that I think the scoreline, Souths were a lot closer than the final scoreline shows. I think they were in that game for long periods. It was a case of Penrith taking their chances and Souths couldn't. And if you look just before halftime there, Souths could have went in a 12-all, even though they would have got a little bit lucky because Cleary missed all those conversions in the first half when it looked like Penrith were blowing Souths off the park there. They sort of hung in there. They had a few half chances and line breaks of their own. And then, it was a bit disappointing for Lachlan Ilias there. I thought he scored, and by the letter of the law, he didn't score because, George Burgess, all he had to do was just take a step to the left towards the post, and it would have been on the other shoulder, and then it would have been a try. And then also, just before halftime there, I posted in the live chat, I think Walker bombed a try there, going short to Cam Murray on the line there, where he could have went in behind to Ilias, and then it was like a 4-on-1. So odds on that they would have scored a try there, and then it would have been 12-10 at least. So I feel that South sort of didn't capitalise when they could have, and then in the second half it was tight for the first 10 minutes, and then as we saw, it was a last tackle play. To me it was a nothing play as well, where I think it was Taylor May gets on the outside of Campbell Graham, and Graham had a simple one-on-one tackle that he makes 9 times out of 10, and then that would have been a handover, but instead it's ends up being a try, and it was an 8-point try as well because Ilias was trying to defend that and then putting his body on the line, and he accidentally he put his foot on May's face, which was a fair 8-point try. And then, I think it was a case where Penrith is same as last year. They went through a few of these games against the lesser teams where they sort of just coasted, and then they really turned it on against the other big 4 and 5. So something that we have to take note that Penrith are still legit and they are as good as they are last year. And I think South are still trying to work through some of the combinations that they're missing from not having Reynolds, and then obviously Latrell Mitchell's playing his 3rd game, and he didn't look all that settled to me. But how did you feel? But we'd still take the 1.5 tries each day of the week, but unfortunately it wasn't how it panned out.
Yeah, and one thing that happened after we took that bet, which also made Penrith closer to the side they were last week, was they got Fisher Harris and Liam Martin back in the team. I mean, we have to try and read the tea leaves, but that does annoy me. Like a week ago, those two, Fisher Harris and Martin, were in the 17 and didn't play. And then this week, they were both outside the 17 and did play. So that didn't do us any favors. And I got that feeling, all right, Penrith's going to be bang up for this. And they are a bit closer to full strength. We all knew Cleary was going to come back, and Cleary was pretty strong as you expect, although they missed a few conversions. And when Penrith are at home and they get in that mood, ultimately, I can't say we had the right side with South, although there were moments that had gone their way, they might have hung in there. And although 1 or 2 of the tries, you scratch your head, they let in 5 tries and they dropped too much ball. So they didn't give themselves a good chance to win the game. And when you take that handicap, even though 1.5 tries is pretty generous, you want them to be in the mix to win the game, where I never really felt like Souths were going to, especially after that try got disallowed. If there's a player that I am going to highlight who's really standing out to me so far in 2022, it's Dylan Edwards. This guy was criminally underrated for a long time. I think everyone understands now how valuable he is and how important he is to the Panthers. Extremely fit player with the super high work rate, and very smart player and very sound. But he looks stronger. He's really putting his hand up and taking carries that bend the line for this team, probably really helping fill the void that they miss with the yardage carries from Brian To'o. And I just think, let's not forget, Edwards played last season's finals with basically a fractured foot, and now he's healed up and he's even more powerful. And Penrith, they're the form team in the competition, and they look pretty scary, to be honest. Now, I was kind of scared watching our best bet go down Saturday afternoon, especially once again a player personnel, and not to make an excuse because Brisbane didn't play well enough to give us, to make us feel that we're justified taking them as a best bet. But we took Brisbane -1.5. And what I'm saying is, before the game even kicked off, another big player personnel news went against us, with Sean Johnson coming back into the side, another guy who wasn't in the 1-17 and had an injury in round 1 that they said would be, I think, 4 weeks, and came back in 3 weeks and led the Warriors to a 20-6 win. Where did we go wrong in this one, Padonis?
Yeah, so I'm happy to say that we were wrong in this game. The way that it sort of panned out, even though Johnson was named, the line only moved to 1.5. So we got a good line anyway on Wednesday, because there was a chance that if he didn't play, our line would have probably been pushed to 4. So not that it counts for much now, but I think Brisbane made too many errors. They sort of picked up where they left off last week, which was a little bit uncharacteristic. And to me, that sort of slipped into some of the old habits that we've seen the last 18 to 24 months, where we used to sort of discard this side. They had quite a few sin bins as well in this game, which sort of doesn't really reflect in the performance, because I think Brisbane still try hard, but I think just they compounded themselves with errors. And not that the Warriors were that brilliant with the ball, but I just feel that Brisbane had a few things go against them, then they couldn't sort of stem back the momentum. And then in the second half, the last sort of 15 to 20 minutes there, they were just trying to chase the game, and that's not sort of how this side's built. I don't think. I feel like they're just as much as a momentum team like all the others are, where they need to sort of be in control. And I don't think they're the side at the moment that can sort of chase points. So from that point of view, it was disappointing how the game started, and I was still pretty confident at halftime, must say. But the second half sort of snowballed like it did last week.
Yeah, like we could have still had a chance in this game. I mean, there's a key moment, 16-6. You're only down 10, and I think it was Johnson throws an intercept to Corey Oates, and the centre and the winger both run 5 metres past him. If it sticks to his hands, it's a try down the other end, and Brisbane's within 4 with like 15 to go, and he drops it. He had another intercept earlier, and he got run down because he's so slow now. But if you're hanging on to an intercept try would have had us within 4, then you're clutching at straws. I wonder if Brisbane's attack has bigger issues than we realised. You win in round 1, the only narrative was how good Brisbane looked, but they scored 11 points, including an intercept try. Round 2, they scored 16 points against the Dogs. I mean, one try was a one-on-one strip returned 30 or 40 metres, wasn't it? Round 3, you scored only one try at home on an afternoon game, which was a penalty try. And then in this game, beautiful conditions, like, a bit of breeze, and you score one try, and it was an individual try by Reynolds recovering his own kick, a moment of class, but that's all. So what's happened with their attack? I mean, I think they missed Capewell. They made a lot of errors really early in the tackle count. It was so frustrating. They'd get a repeat set and they'd dead set spill it on the 0, or make a break and try and push an offload and spill it. And the comment there about Katoni Staggs, and the commentators are begging for it as well, as were we. Get him the ball, but when he gets it, he seems to be trying to do too much, and he's smothered, and doesn't quite look to have that same pop either. And I just think every season is a new season. You don't always know what niggles players are carrying, and you can't always assume that every player that we've known to be superstars in the past are just naturally going to dominate. You kind of want to see it before you believe that he's a superstar, which we all know he can be, but we haven't seen it yet in 2022. And in a game like that, you want your star player to step up and break the game open, and it never happened. Now, that aside, Brisbane wasn't the right side to be on. As I said, the attack was way too clunky, but you mentioned things went against him. Albert Kelly hurt his foot very early, was out. Carrigan, PCL knee injury, out early. Flegler got sin binned, and it was a pretty soft sin bin. I know he got cited to the judiciary 3 or 4 times, but what he actually got sin bin for, late hit on Adam Fanua-Blake, who dug right into the line. So these are quite a few moments in a game that was reasonably tight. Nothing went Brisbane's way, but, you make your own luck. Brisbane didn't play well enough to deserve that one. So good win by the Warriors, back-to-back wins by the Warriors. Later on Saturday in Mudgee, I'm going to sum this game up by what happened in the period of 5 minutes. It was anybody's game. It was 10-6 to Manly. If you're on the Raiders, they were applying the pressure. They had a chance to win this game. They're only down 10-6 with, let's say, 20 minutes to go in the game. DCE kicks a 20-40 from inside his own 20 on the third tackle when they're under pressure. DCE then assists a try to Olakuatu, that very attacking set, off a kick. The very next set, Manly gets the ball off the kickoff. DCE kicks a 40-20. The very next attacking set, Turbo scores. Now it's 22-6. It's game over. Did you have any other observations? That's pretty much all there was to it in that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Manly sort of blew the scoreboard out a bit, but Canberra were right in that game for at least the first 60, 65 minutes. And if you look at all the stats after the game as well, the meters were similar, had the same line breaks, tackle breaks were similar. So I think it was a pretty even game. I think both sides had to defend well. Given that they've leaked a few tries in a few games this season. I think Manly we sort of said on Wednesday that they'd like to put in a better offensive performance and try to score a few tries, because they have been struggling so far in the few games that they've had, and we made some excuses for them. But I didn't think that their attack clicked, even though you see 25 points. So from that point of view, I think Manly is still a work in progress. And then Canberra, coming off that huge comeback win last week, I sort of called for a bit of regression and that they might sort of still be celebrating that win. But I think Canberra were pretty switched on, and I think Canberra are a little bit better than what I probably thought at the start of the season. I know you had them in your top 8, and I had them just missing, but I think Canberra have shown they're pretty resilient, and they'll cause some trouble for some teams throughout the season.
It's ominous, isn't it? The Manly won 13-12 last year for their first win of the season, then went to Mudgee and dominated, and the same thing has happened. History's repeating itself. And Turbo was limping a little bit early, but in the end kind of warmed up and strode out and did score a try and did kind of dominate in the second half. But once that momentum all turned on the boot of Cherry Evans, then it was game over basically, and comfortable win for Manly. It's just kind of typical, isn't it, that we needed Manly to win our best bet last week and to win the mixed matchup, and they dish up a crappy game in poor conditions, and it's 12-all with 5 to go against the Dogs. And then this week, Manly wins by 20. Everything goes their way second half, and the Doggies, which we'll get to, get absolutely dump trucked. So just a week later, those teams playing closer to what our expectations were. But at least we got this one right, which was the Roosters 28 defeating the Cowboys 4 in North Queensland at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. And we did have a best bet, which was Roosters minus 5.5. So that one won as easily as you would like. Thank goodness, because we needed something to go our way. It was champagne footy from the Chooks, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal performance from the Roosters, and sort of really showed, I think, this week, with the exception of the Panthers game, because they played like another heavyweight, but all the other contenders sort of flexed their muscles this week, and we're sort of starting to see the gap again opening up between some of the lower sides that we sort of saw last year. So it hasn't really happened yet because of all the unders and all the underdogs covering, but as the season wears on, I think we'll start to see more of these style of results. We just need to obviously pick and choose our moments when we do come in on a heavy favourite. But yeah, the Roosters, as we said, they were it was a good team off a bad performance and a bad team off a good performance, and it was like that sort of classic spot, and the Roosters sort of put it together on the night. I think they could have scored a few more tries, and the points could have looked a bit more sort of severe against the Cowboys. I think Walker missed a lot of conversions as well, and Cowboys also had 3 sin bins, so I don't think the Roosters really executed all the best during that period when they played against half an hour with a man advantage. So I think Robinson still got plenty of work on. Don't forget, he wasn't even there. So I think there's plenty of opportunities to build on. And me and Jacob were sort of talking over the weekend on Saturday night, where it was one of those games where we wish we sort of took a few more plays in that game perhaps. But all in all, we'll get there as the season rolls on.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have that game included in the mixed matchup. I was actually telling you my preferred matchup was going to be Roosters to outscore Panthers, which would have been 28-26. And I know everyone's got to be sighing right now, but I couldn't actually get that matchup for us because the Roosters team total was 2 points higher than Penrith, and we always need to be at least $2 at the bare minimum, basically an underdog in the mixed matchup. So it's where the market comes into play with the mixed matchup, where I try and make it work. And I wish we could have worked the Roosters Cowboys game into it, because not only were we really confident, but it did break our way, but it wasn't to be. The point you made there, you think that a few more of the big dogs are going to start to flex their muscles. Some of them might have started quite slow. Roosters admittedly saying they were underdone and using the first couple of weeks as preseason. That's absolutely true. We're going to see some big favourites win by bigger scores as we move through the season, but the lines are also going to get bigger. So, this round 4, there were some cheaper lines on some of these, clearly better teams. They're cheaper lines in hindsight, but that's because a lot of underdogs had covered this season and a lot of games had gone under. But definitely as that trend and more people would have won their same game multis and got their anytime try scorers and things like that, the bookies will adjust. So it's going to be the challenge for us to know when we can actually grab extra points with an underdog that's actually got a real chance of competing for 80. And although a few things went against the Cowboys, they didn't really have a chance in that game. Now, we'll also just point out we had Trevor Gilmeister, who picked his underdog of the week and actually picked the Cowboys for the upset win. And then Robbie Farah's tip did come through and it wasn't included on the pod. But guess what? He backed up his Cowboys tip in round 3, which was fantastic, underdog win at Suncorp, and he took the Cowboys again, and that didn't work out too well. So both our Dabble celebrities took the Cowboys, but we were on the right side. So if you're keeping track of that, Padonis, you can mark one to the pod. We got one over the former players there. Now, speaking of Dabble, I got to give a shout out to a member of the pod family, Benny Scarf, who co-hosts No Morals, which is on the Tripod Facebook page, a weekly racing preview show. On Dabble, he tipped a 343-1 racing multi on Saturday, anchored by Mr. Brightside. I think he had the winner in the final 4 races at Randwick. I mean, that's an all-timer. So if you're on Dabble and you're interested in racing at all, follow at Benny Scarf. Shout out, Benny. Let's move to Sunday. So a couple blowouts. So you don't learn a great deal from blowouts sometimes. Once one team gets ahead of steam and a massive scoreboard advantage, then, it's not a very indicative game anymore. But you can let me know if you did learn anything from this Storm 44-0 drubbing of the Bulldogs.
I think the first thing I learned is how good Pappenhausen's hair looks in the wind as he's racing downfield there. He scored 4 tries today, which was a phenomenal performance. We sort of said that the line looked a little bit cheap and the Dogs have been covering, but they sort of met a whole new performance and level here. It was a Storm at full strength, and they were pretty dominant from start to finish. I thought they sort of hung in there for a bit in the first 20 minutes, but then once the Storm got a few tries, they sort of ran away with the game. And even though we didn't have an official best bet, I posted a multi in Dabble. Speaking of Dabble, as you just mentioned, it was $2.46. We had Storm halftime, full time, and then Parramatta minus 9.5. So that's a small little win for anyone that sort of jumped on that today. But apart from that, I didn't really have too much to take away from this one.
Yeah, I mean, Pappenhausen is a guy who is looking like the player that was setting the league on fire early last year. Before he got that bad magic round concussion, he was on fire last year, and people are saying they got to fit him in the New South Wales team, and he looks to be in that same sort of form. So he's absolutely electric. And look, the Doggies, I don't even know if you can blame them too much, just because the Storm were just so immense today. But it is a bit of a reality check for the Dogs. As we had said, the previous 3 games all within one score, obviously right down to the wire. And then you had this game that was just over basically by half time. The final game of the round wasn't over by half time. In fact, it was only a 4-point margin at half time, but it finished on the screen. It hasn't updated, but final score 44-14. Did you see
48.
that? Sorry.
Yeah.
48-14, Parramatta. Now the Dragons changed up their team. I didn't hear why. Was it discipline, if you heard Matheos? But Amone and Sloan were both dropped. Mbai started at fullback. McCulloch was back. He played hooker. Jack Bird played 5'8". And hey, it was a tight game in the first half. I think 12-8 at half time. But in the second half, Parramatta completely blew the Dragons away. And they've got the look about them this year of kind of being the real deal. And one of the hallmarks of these true contenders, I know people will dismiss when it's a poor opponent, but you can kind of tell, I think, sometimes these real ruthless powerhouses when they just dismantle a team and when they've got the look of a really confident footy team and when they do something good and everyone gets around each other. And Parramatta certainly look confident, look like they're enjoying their footy, and tore the Dragons to absolute shreds in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I'd say on that, I don't really think that it might not have been sort of suspension based. I think that sort of Griffin just changed it up because he felt that they needed a bit of a change. And had that news came out on Tuesday or Wednesday, then that would have made me even more confident on the Eels, and we probably would have taken it. Because I sort of feel like if you're changing your spine at this stage in the season, when you've already had a win and you've had some close games, then I don't really feel like Griffin's got the confidence in the spine and the team to sort of deliver in these games. And that would have made me, as I said, even more confident on the Eels at minus 9.5, and it moved to 10.5 today. But in saying that, I thought Parramatta were pretty pretty dominant, flex their muscles again in what you would say was sort of a little bit of a sleepy spot, given that they had such a euphoric win last week against the Storm. They had every reason to sort of coast through the game. But Parramatta, ended the game. It was 12-8. It was pretty close at halftime, as you said. And then in the 15-minute span, just after halftime, they scored 4 tries and the game was over.
The Dragons, I mean, when you change up your spine is one thing, but you pick Moses and By at fullback, I mean, that's not going to strike fear into the heart of any opponent. I feel like there had to be more to that story, because those are a couple of players that actually, have upside that you want. Not only do you want to keep developing, but they give you a chance maybe as an underdog. Whereas I feel like you go safe options and your McCullochs and your Mbai, where was the spark going to be for the Dragons? And in the end, they were second best all afternoon. We were second best against the bookies in round 4, but we'll be back at it. It's still very early days. Definitely got faith that we can find some stronger and sharper sides moving forward, and that will happen on Wednesday, where we'll give you our best bets and our breakdown for round 5. So have a good week. Till then, guys, gamble responsibly anytime you're having a punt. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us even through tougher time. Hopefully we can bring you the rewards Wednesday. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me, Panonis.
All good. See you, boys.
Lego.